Thank you everyone for joining. This will be the first of a series on RPA and state and local government. So it's important to emphasize that this is really going to be a focus on state and local. It is different than federal government and others as well. I also like to thank Thundercat for hosting. Also Vita, VIP, and Tony Wood, as he had mentioned, we've been collaborating when I was in government as well as outside. So really appreciate that partnership. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Keith McDaniel and UiPath. The partnership between UiPath and Amplitude9 has been just tremendous. And so Keith is a wealth of knowledge. He's been a great partner. So I want to definitely give him a special thanks in terms of all the support over the past year or so. The slides will be available and sent over email. And I just wanted to mention that I'm the CEO of Amplitude9. We provide robotic process automation solutions that improve service delivery to citizens, provide significant organizational cost savings, and increase employee productivity and satisfaction. We have certified RPA solution architects, developers, and business analysts. We're also SWAM certified and P3 certified. So we're dedicated to hiring veterans and as well as others who are retraining in the workforce, and RPA is a perfect technology for that. We have statewide contracts available for delivery of RPA products and services to state agencies. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in RPA and having a further discussion or talking about pilots or how to get started. So I was the former Deputy Secretary of Technology for Governor McAuliffe. And one of the things that I really enjoyed during my time was to work with the Commonwealth workforce. I spent most of my time thinking about how tech can help them and improve citizen outcomes as well. So a good bit of time that I focused on was in data and analytics, and the maturity between when I first started in 2014 and where it is now, I think has grown tremendously. And I'm as excited, if not more excited, about robotic process automation. Slide, please. I've been in the public sector for over 25 years, and the message has always been, we need to do more with less, for the last 20 of those years. So the expectations continue to grow for more services, more compliance, and to do more with less and less. The budgets get tighter. There's more work to get done from public servants' plates. And obviously with COVID-19 and other situations, the stakes get higher and higher. So you add to that the workforce shifts in terms of folks retiring, the new workforce coming in. You have pressures from the public sector for talent. The competition grows more and more for talent. So that creates a lot of turnover, a lot of issues around workforce. Also, underinvestment in new systems. We've seen this in unemployment and other types of systems, during the pandemic, but also before that. And then there's more regulatory compliance and security. So obviously, cybersecurity is a big issue, and it continues to grow, and the threat vector continues to change all the time. So all that creates the challenges that we're dealing with right now is a very challenged workforce. And in many cases, we are frustrated citizens in terms of being able to receive services and the delivery of those types of services. So government really needs to find a way to find tools and methods to do more with more instead of more with less. Next slide, please. So when I was introduced to RPA, I really got goosebumps. This was the first technology that I came across that I was really excited, where it can help the human worker. So it can help the citizens by helping the government workers deliver services and really help them get ahead of the curve. It's technology that can take hours of mundane, tedious tasks and repetitive work off of a government worker's plate. So they can spend more time on things that they specialize, and at the end, that's going to help citizens more. So the analogy I think about that it makes it clear in my mind is, imagine how many patients could be served by a doctor, how many can be healed, how many possibly can be saved if they were able to take those hours of administrative work off their plates. So hospitals are using RPA to do just that. It's the same thing in terms of being able to have government workers, public servants be able to deliver more services and help citizens. They can be freed from the mundane work and the things that they don't like to do, and be able to refocus those particular hours onto helping citizens and work on things that they specialize. So it certainly can be done with robotic process automation. So let's go ahead and define RPA in simple terms. Next slide, please. RPA overall is a technology that can mimic what a user does on their computer screen. So if you can imagine whatever you're doing on a day-to-day basis, especially the mundane work and the things that are just basically looking up emails, transferring information from one system to the next, or dealing with different things that take hours to do, but certainly are things that you repeat and things that can be automated. So those are the things that you should think about in terms of what you can automate. So think about Word, Outlook, Oracle Financials, legacy systems like COBOL systems. All those things can be used by RPA to be automated. So we haven't seen a limitation as far as a particular system, because what it is it sits on top of the systems that you already have. It's not something you integrate, but it basically interacts from a user interface perspective with those particular systems and basically performs tasks between those systems like a user would. So I want you to be able to stay tuned for the demos later towards the end, because that's really where it crystallizes as far as the value that's being created and how it actually works. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit more context in terms of what bots can do, so they can log into applications just like a human does, as long as they have the credentials to do so. They can move data between systems and files. So for example, if you pull down an email and you want to be able to have that email information be put into Excel, then you transfer it into another system. RPA can help you do all of that as long as it's rules-based and it doesn't vary too much. So it can also copy and paste between systems. It can fill forms. It can extract data from PDFs and other semi-structured pieces of information into structured information. It can scrape data. So if you're doing research on different systems for your particular task, it can do that for you and pull that information down on a routine basis, and much, much more. It can incorporate with artificial intelligence and computer vision and natural language processing to be able to be more extensible. So it's not just a robot that can really just follow rules. It's really extending through artificial intelligence to be able to be more flexible. Slide, please. So at the end of the day, we have to talk about the value. So, I'm really passionate about this, as I mentioned before. We got to be able to give our public servants the tools and the technology to be able to free them up, because they're getting more and more work on their load of tasks to do because of hiring freezes and budget cuts. So we've got to give them these tools to be able to do those jobs and be able to take on more types of tasks. So we want to be able to increase employee job satisfaction and retention through robotic process automation integration. We also want to improve service delivery to citizens and give them a good experience in terms of engaging with government. So there are a lot of different things in terms of legacy processes, the way citizens engage, that we can automate. So it's important to know that RPA is also an opportunity to do business process reengineering. So you don't want to automate tasks for the sake of automating tasks. You want to improve them first and then automate that task to be able to really make sure that's streamlined. So, one of the biggest values is to be able to reduce compliance risks, whether it's, federal regulations or state statutes like FOIA or the Virginia Public Procurement Act or the Virginia Records Retention Act. Those are the types of things that bots can really help, because there's an audit trail with logs, but also the bot follows the rules. So if you're able to automate those things, then it decreases your risk and also some accuracy in terms of the information being collected or being transferred really goes up. So finally, I want to be able, next slide, please. Finally, I want to just be able to say that RPA is a newer technology to government, but it has also been in the the private sector for a very long time in finance and other areas like procurement and HR. It's a great fit for government. It's really, really built for helping workers when they're stretched thin. And again, as I mentioned, in the age of hiring freezes and budget uncertainty, RPA is extensible. So it can really help augment when there's a surge, and then you can pare those bots back down, just like you do with other SaaS types of solutions. So instead of adding temporary workers onto the load and having to let them go and things like that, you can surge using RPA. So it's not a replacement for people, that is to help the current workforce augment. And then, the backlogs of applications. We've seen this tremendous, result of being able to use RPA and bring down those claims backlog with unemployment, Medicaid, TANF. If you look at CDL licenses and DMV, so they can be reduced or eliminated in days. And then you have the typical backlogs if you're doing hiring in HR or in finance. You have surges as far as during cycles of the year, for example, tax and tax season. So there's a lot of ways to be able to deploy these bots in a very economical way for these types of surges and backlogs. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and spend the remainder of the time that we have with our panel, and really excited, as Tony Wood had talked about, we got great panelists here. And the first thing I wanted to be able to do is get Jonathan's perspective. So Jonathan, why would an agency onboard RPA given their current IT investments, say, for example, in cybersecurity or in these other areas? Why is RPA a good fit?
Well, I think number one, I would say I never recommend anybody cut down in this day and age on cybersecurity. Right. So that's a given. But I can answer this from a few perspectives. And I'll look at it both from the perspective of the public sector, but also in the private sector where the majority of my career has been. So my personal journey with RPA began in 2007 when I was an international finance manager in the hospitality industry. Now, part of my background, I have a software development and computer science background, so I use that to develop scripts to automate certain international finance reconciliations, analyses, and functions so that we can actually focus the team on just closing the deals, things that are accretive to revenue and not administrative work. And I have done quite a bit hands-on, but also just rolling it out with RPA since then in different industry verticals, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do in the Commonwealth with that as well. So I think when you focus on technology investments, there needs to be an analysis and discussion of ROI, return on investment. Why are you investing in the technology? What are you expecting it to do, et cetera? So a lot of technologies that you may implement, you can talk about servers, you can talk about cloud hosting, you can talk about laptops and devices. There's not necessarily a direct correlation with the bottom line. And this would be harder to justify, in my opinion, with an environment where there's tightening budgets and revenue uncertainty. So speaking specifically about RPA, when done correctly, it has a very attractive value proposition. When you implement, and Tony Fung, you spoke about it well, when you implement this solution, it either improves productivity, decreases waste and errors, reduces expenses, or some combination of the three. So from that standpoint, when you're prioritizing technology investments, you want to really sort of move up on the chain those investments that have a very positive multiple, a very positive ROI. They produce more savings, more productivity, more waste reductions than what you spend. So RPA does tend to be very cost effective. It can improve operating expenses, and also depending on how you deploy it, it can also improve the customer experience, depending on which process you choose to automate. And I think in this day and age, this makes it very attractive to our customer agencies, especially from the return on investment standpoint. And the last thing I'll leave you with, I don't just say it for the agencies, I'll say it for myself too, to just add a little bit more oomph to the statement. I'm personally prioritizing RPA to be part of our service portfolio at Vita, because this is one of those solutions where, as I've said, when you do it well, it has a wealth of benefits and a very positive ROI multiple to the customer.
That's fantastic, and we've experienced that. We've had some various pilot projects with RPA, and we can quickly demonstrate the value of RPA and have it pay for itself many times. So they're very great points there. I do know Aneesh is a gentleman who's pretty busy with the Biden administration, and so is Aneesh on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks for joining. Great to see you. Of
course. Great to hear from you, Tony.
So Aneesh,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Aneesh, you have a very special vantage point from your previous roles. So you were the first federal chief technology officer under Obama, And also you were the Secretary of Technology for Virginia under Kane. So how and where do you see RPA having an impact in government?
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the dialogue you've shared already. I think the business case for RPA to improve operations and productivity is a pretty straightforward one, and you've done a great job sharing it. In Virginia specifically, I thought I might peel the onion back a second layer. As many of you on the webinar know, Virginia has a history of performance. Best managed state, best state for business, best place to raise your family. Now those accolades go up and down over the years, but we've been consistently seen as effective in our use of data. If you recall, in the Kane administration, when we won best managed state that year, Governing Magazine specifically highlighted the role of our performance management framework. That framework is, I believe, the core use case for RPA. We basically said, we're going to set bold goals. More kids should successfully complete reading by the third grade. We should preserve 100,000 acres for land, for long-term land preservation. We should enroll every eligible Medicaid beneficiary. These key societal outcomes were published on the Virginia Performs website. And we built a productivity investment fund seeded with about $4 million from the General Assembly, where we were investing in strategies that could do any of three things: take the core operations of government and run them more effectively and efficiently. And so we had the Virginia Tax Department, for example, say, we're sick of physically taking security trucks to the bank across the street. Can we instead scan and digitize the deposits and just have it go electronically? It seems so obvious and simple, but it required an investment to get there. We also said, let's improve the customer experience. How many days does it take to qualify for a benefit? And might we make an investment to reduce those days or simplify the process? I remember the Area Agency on Aging, they took the 9-point font, 13-page Medicaid enrollment form, and they built a much simpler user experience so that seniors or the disabled who qualify for Medicaid could understand what it is that they're asking for and to navigate what is otherwise a complicated process for benefits. But the third category was around investments to achieve an outcome objective. And it is in that latter category where I see the greatest potential for RPA. Let's take the moment in time we're in right now, COVID vaccinations. The Biden administration's announced they want to get 100 million people vaccinated in 100 days. That means there's going to be a Virginia version of that goal. And the governor's office has put a very competent leader in Danny Avula in the task of helping to drive this slot. But let's look at all of the logistics. We need to know where the vaccine is going. Is it going to a hospital? Is it going to the local health department? Is it going to the Walgreens or CVS? Once it's there, who is able to schedule for it? And are we able to ensure that those who are digitally savvy don't get preferential treatment from those who may not be familiar with how to access and use scheduling slots online? So if we're trying to build equitable access to vaccines and we've got to monitor all these requirements, who's got the open slots right now? Oh, they've just unthawed the Pfizer vaccine in Innova, and there's an extra 50 slots because some folks turned it down that they were expecting. How do we get the right group of 50 to come in? I see RPA playing a very important immediate role in achieving customer outcomes. Getting the 100 million in 100 days Virginia version would be an example. And I think there's many more like that as we think about the agencies. Many of you on this webinar are on the tech team, and it's not your job to tell the agency lead how to do their job. But I do believe it's your role to suggest how technology can enable the policy ambitions to be done better, faster, cheaper. And understanding how tools like RPA can bring low cost, relatively quick time to market answers is something that would be helpful to the decision makers on any number of outcomes measures. And that trade-off of understanding how emerging technologies can advance an objective that otherwise is seen as impossible is an area that I hope we'll do more of in the coming weeks. Final comment, Tony, I would say this. Part of the vision of having a Secretary of Technology, and I know that's changed in Virginia, but we still have the spirit of that, is that we want to have governance where individuals who have an understanding about the power and potential of technology, data, and innovation, serving as key advisors to the agency heads or policymakers advising the governor. That function is critical. As these new capabilities come to life, it is incumbent on us to educate the possibilities and to translate, here are the 5 things we want to get done. Can we get there faster? Yes, in an ideal world, we'd have fully interoperable systems where everything's automated and everything's working in an ideal way. We don't have to log into 15 different systems at once. But I know the world that we live in today, and that world needs some productivity enhancing support while we work towards the nirvana of perfectly automated integrated systems. I hope that's helpful, and I'm happy to dive deeper if appropriate as we need.
Yeah, you said that's fantastic. As far as the use case you bring up is very timely. There are many, many use cases where it has a tremendous impact for citizens, being able to improve outcomes for them and empowering our, state workforce to be able to deliver. I'll go to you, Joel. Question for you. What are some of the criteria that you would suggest an agency use to determine if RPA is a good fit for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you had hit a topic a little bit earlier, which is perfectly relevant, which, when you look at automation in the perfect world, it's really good at mimicking human behavior. And so when you look across an organization that has lots of different systems that exist, any type of swivel chair activities, repetitive types of activities, in things like benefits processing, there are caseworkers who will literally go through the same process for each different account where they'll pull up all of the different systems around a specific applicant, and then criteria are used to make decisions. Well, what we find in many organizations is that 80 to 90% of the applicants that are submitting for either new types of benefits or renewals of benefits, they fully meet those obligations, or they meet the requirements. And so having an automated environment to take the easy ones off the table and let people focus on the more complicated ones. And typically what we see in organizations like this, using this example, is there are typically a lot of backlogs. And the backlogs exist just because there aren't enough people to handle the types of requests that may happen through, either seasonal activities, or in the case of COVID, where you have a surge that's happening. Think of automation and RPA as a digital workforce that works alongside of the employees. And when I say alongside, they can work with the employees. So we have many cases in state and local government where the automations will be up and running. They'll go through the process. They may find a situation where there's an exception to one of the requirements for an applicant. They will then, they being the robots, will then include a person in the loop. So there will be a task queue, or there may be an Outlook task that's created. It may be a text message that's sent, whatever it is that works for the organization. But the robot, in essence, brings a person into the conversation and either hands it off to them or works alongside of them. But the end result is the backlogs tend to get cleared very quickly. I had customers that have had customer applications in the tune of 30,000 people in a backlog queue, that when robots were introduced, so in this particular case, this was a social benefit organization, 30,000 in the queue, they introduced 10 robots into the process, and within 2 weeks, they cleared the entire queue. Now, I want to be really careful. That's not setting the expectation that you just add automation in place and it's magic and everything, it just instantly goes away. But as I said, the highly repetitive swivel chair activities, you can add into the automation process. And remember, the robots only do what you program them to do. They can't do anything other than that. And so using them as a set of digital assistants or digital workers becomes a really great benefit. One other thing that I'll mention is if there are activities that tend to be fatiguing for people, again, you have to open 9 different systems and pull lots of different bits of information, or possibly error prone, copy and paste from one system to another system. Those are perfect places for robots to step into the mix and help provide some overall benefit. And we've been lucky that we worked with state and local government now for, well, I've been with UiPath about 2.5 years, and I've been working with states and large counties for most of that time. So we have a lot of different use cases and examples. I'd be glad to go into those if any additional questions come up.
Joel, that's fantastic. Thank you. And I think that really hits home as far as being able to help, folks, with a digital worker to be able to help with those surges. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example of a bot in action. That there's definitely the words, but watching it in action, it actually makes the biggest difference in the world to just kind of connect with it. So the first example is to show how RPA can work with multiple modern and legacy system applications. So I saw a question pop up about SAP. So this example is going to show you how legacy systems connect to newer technologies and external systems and other parts of government to be able to share information and connect those particular systems. So let's go ahead and play that, please. I think the sound is not playing.
Maybe Tony, you can attempt to wing it. Why don't you?
Yeah, sure.
Track over
Yeah.
it.
Go ahead and roll the video. So I'll narrate. So basically, you have Excel spreadsheet, you have Salesforce, you have Word, and basically what the user is doing is running a bot so they can actually perform all the different tasks that this particular user would have done manually. And so basically, a bot was written to be able to connect all those different applications, through logging in and being able to take information from this particular spreadsheet and being able to go into a mainframe system, enter information, pull information out, put that into Salesforce, and be able to draw information from Salesforce, go into their email, being able to download something from email and enter and send emails based on some user actions. And then finally, being able to put that into the SAP system. So the point of this is really being able to show that it can really interact with all these different tools. It's your standard applications like Word and Excel, a mainframe system that's 30 years old, but you can't connect to it because it doesn't have an API. And you're transferring data from one place to another and doing all these types of interactions. They're all very rules-based and they're very straightforward. So basically, it's really demonstrating how it can cut across all these systems and being able to interact with all of those. One of the benefits is really extends the life of legacy systems. So when you're talking about switching from one system to the next, RPA allows you to be able to extend your current environment while you either raise the investment in terms of budgetary funds, or you want to extend the life because you want to integrate a newer system over a longer period of time to reduce the risk of switching on to a new system. So that's the first demo that we wanted to show you. So let's go into a couple more questions. Jonathan, what is the function of what functions in state government would you start with as far as using RPA in operations?
And I appreciate the question, Tony. I think, given everything that's been said to date, this is a really good question and one that I've thought extensively about. In my role as Chief Operating Officer of VITA, I'm really trying to consistently identify value-added technology services that have an immediate impact to the underlying business of my customers' agencies. In general, RPA, it's very flexible. The applicability is wide. As long as it's a process that is defined, doesn't have a lot of ambiguity. I think you said it well in terms of saying you don't want to automate a bad process. So certainly you do a little bit of business process reengineering. But as long as it's not something that's, totally ambiguous, like there's different decision points that require a person to think about and analyze various data points. And then, there's some subjectivity in the decision process. RPA is a very valid option. So some of the things that come to mind for me, anything involving document handling, reconciliation, reporting, validation, form processing, financial management, and even just reporting in the financial sense of invoices, subsidiary ledgers, and things like that. Now I'll give a very real world example for Vita specifically. So what we've done is I've green lit some pilots to be run with RPA within Vita. Not only for internal process enhancement, but also to allow us to document case studies and white papers that we can share with our customers as we make RPA a service. So in the first pilot, we focused on supplier billings within the finance area. So from a business perspective, we as Vita view ourselves as stewards of the Commonwealth money, and we need to ensure that we are never overpaying for goods and services. So when you do an audit of those charges that come through, there's a validation, there's a reconciliation. It's very manual intensive because to date, using Excel spreadsheets and looking at different systems, it is very much prone to error. And just understanding the business problem, there are potentially hundreds or thousands of invoice line items that need to be reviewed in order to do a proper audit of these supplier billings. So our pilot focused on a certain subset of billings and performed cross-system verification through automation, including a duplicate billing check. And the results of the pilot were overwhelmingly positive, very promising for the future state. The projection is that the time taken to perform this validation at a high accuracy rate and a very fast throughput compared to the prior state where it was very manual and intensive. So extrapolating this to the entire population of supplier billings across the board, this has the potential, due to the time savings as well as the accuracy enhancements of the process, to save the Commonwealth tens of, like, it's either going to be a 5-figure or a 6-figure saving. So we're talking, tens or hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars. So, that to me really highlights the business case of the opportunity that we have here in state government to really roll out some of these solutions and enhancing our processes with robotic process automation.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. That use case is tremendous. There's many more that can be replicated similar to that across agencies. So definitely we'll get into the next video where you can see where it can actually be applied to all of the agencies as far as what a bot can do. Thank you for that. And Aneesh, you have a focus on healthcare, and obviously you have that purview of having been in state government as well as federal. So what do you see as far as state and local government health agencies using RPA? How can they use RPA to improve outcomes?
Well, listen, the holy grail has been health and human services integration. I know with Vita, we've worked for years on this idea of, single client ID. This is a person on food stamps. This is a person on Medicaid. This is a person qualifying for heating subsidies. And we've made progress, of course, in building out some of those technologies. However, there remains on the ground challenges with respect to how these dots connect to help people's lives. So let's link health and human services with the COVID crisis and education. My kids, I have all 3 of my kids in public schools, and like every other family, I'm stressed and frustrated about the pace with which we can get them back into the classrooms. One of the biggest challenges has been broadband adoption. So we have kids in school who can't participate, and there's a little bit of a gray area. The county government approves funding for hotspots. We send emails, parents don't know to fill them out. There's a whole litany of problems, but let's go through health and human services. What percentage of those families have actually applied for broadband subsidies through programs like Lifeline? Nationally, it's only 15%. So how does the CIO at the local Department of Education, maybe supported by the State Department of Education, engage with Health and Human Services to pre-qualify all of the family members who qualify for the benefit and get them enrolled? Not by government grants, but by existing programs. If you're a Medicaid recipient or a food stamp recipient, you're automatically eligible for the Lifeline broadband subsidy. How many local school CIOs are able to take their roster of families up against those databases to pre-qualify families and get them to apply? Sadly, Tony, I don't see that use case. My local CIO says he doesn't have the data, doesn't have access. These are pragmatic, real world opportunities that we're just not capable of solving. And we can do them much better, faster, cheaper if we deployed, in this example, bots to help auto enroll or auto qualify individuals. And so that health and human services, data integration, single version of truth, who is eligible for what service? Are they getting the benefits they deserve? Is it helping them achieve their life goals? We haven't connected those dots, and we have to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the Anish. And, I think your example really hits home that it's not just a state government, but a local government. We can really apply RPA and really help local governments in terms of what they're dealing with, and that exchange between local and state government as well. A lot of times, local governments talk about sending information to the state and never hearing back, or that type of exchange. And so RPA can really help those interconnections between levels of government, whether it's data exchange or being able to help with process. Joel, just wanted to ask you a quick question as far as what are the likely motivators for RPA being approved? What have you seen in terms of obstacles for agencies looking to move forward with it?
I think the big thing is having some measurable goal, having something that you're trying to achieve. And that's been the number one, area. So it's a very cool technology, and I'm a technology person. I've been doing technology in public sector for 25 plus years, but this is not a sake of technology for the sake of technology, right? This is a goal of using technology to help solve the challenges within public sector. So being able to measure something, I think, is incredibly important. Now, that said, one of the key things that has come up that we were not expecting is that there is a measurement of employee morale that seems to go up when automation is included in the mix. And, again, I say it wasn't expected because that's not typically one of the indicators that comes back to us on the technology front. But what we find is once people realize that they don't have to do the tasks that were repetitive and manual and time consuming and fatiguing, then all of a sudden their jobs become easier. We were working with one of the workmen's compensation organizations with a large state. And the director of the group came back to us and she said, my people are happier than they've been in a long time. And the reason was every morning they'd spend the first hour combing through their inbox for all of the tasks that they needed to focus on. And in her terms, these were the things that people hated doing. And if they could take that off the table and let people focus more on what people are good at focusing on, which is the human cognitive piece, that made it easier. So they put robots in place. The robots spent the first hour. Well, the robots did the job before the people even came into the office. So that way, when people got to work, they didn't need to spend that first hour in what ultimately they were trying to do. Now, that said, one of the things that I wanted to highlight, from a technology perspective, you can have the best technology in the world, the coolest, capability that's out there. But in reality, especially in the state and local space, you need to make sure that the technology, one, fits into the overall footprint of what you're trying to do. And then two, it complies with really 4 key topics, of which I wish I could say technology were one of the big pieces. Really, the 4 topics that we find are, there's a legal aspect. So making sure that what the robots are doing are in compliance with how the organization should work. There's a policy component. So even though laws may allow certain things to happen, there are policies that exist, making sure the robots, are cued into what the policies are. The third is risk. So we've had a lot of people that come back and say, well, we don't necessarily want the robots to touch certain types of records unless we can audit what they're doing, just like you would an employee. And the beauty is the robots are digital employees, so they are fully auditable. We have some organizations that have robots work on behalf of an employee using the same credential. And then in some cases, they have their own credential. So again, very easy to manage that. But the last piece, and this I find very interesting, is a political component. And so understanding what the goals are within the organization and using the robots and the automation process to support the goals of the mission of the organization. So that means put them on the high value tasks, the things that are going to generate the most reward for the organization, as opposed to just all of the backlog tasks that may exist. So being very smart. One last comment I wanted to throw in. Jonathan made a comment around, bad processes. And I think it's really important for people to realize it's very easy to automate a bad process. And the last thing you want to do is continue to pour resourcing into a bad process. But one of the outcomes that we've seen that wasn't expected is that we find a lot of organizations that say, we don't have the time or the bandwidth to re-engineer a specific process right now. If we can just automate that process to get it off the table so we can get people away from that bad process, let's use the robots to do that. And when the time is appropriate, we will re-engineer that process. So we've seen organizations go on that path. What I always say is, don't consider that done. You still want to go focus on that process when the time and resources are appropriate. So, set a reminder monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, to be able to go back. But again, a lot of really positive things that we're seeing.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. There's quantitative and qualitative types of measurements that can be taken, and even with employee satisfaction, you can take surveys and really measure, the improvement that RPA and other solutions can provide. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. So this one is going to be about FOIA. So every agency has to, basically deal with FOIA, and the time to response are fixed, resources are limited, and it's usually someone's second job to handle FOIA, and the requests keep growing. So RPA is a perfect fit for this type of task, and obviously it can apply across all the agencies. So this is an investment that really can pay off very quickly. So if we can go ahead and play that.
Hello. Today, I will demonstrate a custom activity I built in UiPath. Its purpose is to hide confidential text before publishing PDFs, a common step to ensure compliance to data privacy laws. Redaction is often laborious and error-prone, and mistakes can lead to costly legal ramifications. Here, I have a group of files. Some are contracts, service agreements, and financial documents with sensitive data. For example, I'll open the general contractor document. Here, we see lots of sensitive data, such as tax IDs, dates, account numbers, government-issued IDs, and even the name of what could be a minor. Many people will redact this manually, a process that's very time-consuming and prone to error. But what if we could simply tell our robot what kinds of things to redact? Here, I will select the file, and for demonstration purposes, I will ask the robot to highlight sensitive data rather than redact. Next, I'll write in the name of the minor and ask the robot to look for any text that contains social security numbers and other confidential data. In the top left, you can see a status report of what the robot is doing right now. Once the robot completes the redaction, it exports the redacted document to a user-designated folder. Again, for the purpose of this demo, I selected the option to highlight rather than to redact the document. As you can see, it was able to find all of the sensitive data. Often, you might have several documents needing redaction. Instead of choosing a single file manually, you may want the robot to continually monitor a specific folder and automatically redact any and all PDF documents that end up there. So let's see how well the robot redacts multiple PDFs in batch mode. Let's take a peek at what the robot is doing by entering the redaction folder and looking at the output as the robot is completing each document. Finally, our robot finished redacting all of the PDFs. As we open each document, you'll see that the robot automatically redacted the sensitive data. Note that the redaction color is set to orange to help you view it for this demo. In summary, UiPath Robot helps to ensure legal compliance, reduce the time to safely publish, and doesn't rely on costly third-party software. To learn more, please visit www.uipath.com.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And so that really, I think, pulls everything together. You have a bot that pulls down the files, helps analyze the data. You have document understanding and natural language processing to learn from the iterations of information that you need to redact. So that really, I think, ties everything together well. So we're running close on time. So we have some Q&A, and it's been great to see that interaction. I think we may take the Q&A, after the webinar, but I'd like to go to the next slide, please. Keep going to the botathon, please. Okay, great. So with the time we have left, a lot of people are going to wonder, how do I engage with RPA? How do we get started? One of the things that we're working with in partnership with Vita VIP is we're creating the first ever botathon for, in my awareness, first one ever in state and local government. So we're going to crowdsource information from the government agencies. So we have a website here. You can click on that link and provide your suggestions as far as ideas on what you would like to automate, the things that are mundane, the things that are really good candidates. We're going to pick the top 3, and then we're going to have teams of government employees, students, and citizens all come together and develop the automations for those ideas. We're going to also have coaches and mentors, so you don't have to be an RPA specialist. Anyone who's a citizen developer, meaning you have no experience, can really engage with this. And obviously, we're going to have prizes and highlight folks who participate. And then, just wanted to mention that you can go on the link on the website and be able to sign up for that. Next slide, please. And then being able to get started, we've helped a number of organizations within the Commonwealth to start up pilots. We're able to, either do a no-cost pilot or a low-cost pilot. So we really want to hear about your automation ideas and be able to help you through that journey. It's really a light lift in terms of the cost and also the time. So we can really help you prove out the value before there's a major investment in that. And then we're also offering organizations a RPA proof of concept project grant for $10,000. So between UiPath and Amplitude9, we're pulling together funds to be able to help a number of organizations. So if we find a great idea and we're working with you, we would love to be able to spin up a pilot with those funds that we've accumulated for that. So with the remaining time, I just wanted to make sure that the speakers, I wish I had 2 hours with these speakers because they're bringing a wealth of knowledge to you. I'm learning a lot. It's just lightning round thoughts in terms of RPA and just being able to give some last thoughts. So we'll start with Jonathan.
Sure. I mean, well, I do appreciate the opportunity to listen to some of the great speakers today. The content delivered was outstanding. Just to leave with some summary and some final level thoughts. I mean, I think, we really scratched the surface of some examples of what RPA can do for your underlying agency, your underlying business. The potential is great. So, part of what I would advise is just do some brainstorming, think about the processes that you have in-house that would have a very good, benefit to cost multiple, so to speak, very good ROI. And, just really bring those ideas forward and see what we can do. Because like I said, the ROI that you'll get with this type of solution, the cost is very reasonable, but the benefits are immense.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Thank you for your participation and leaning forward with Vita. Aneesh, your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the questions in the chat had to do with this legitimate concern about whether or not RPA may result in potentially layoffs or jobs. My view is we're so understaffed as it is to accomplish mission objectives that what we're really doing is freeing people up to do higher and better services. And to me, more likely we're going to be reinvesting the savings in improvement on the tasks that we know we need to get done. And if anything, it should result in better quality of life for folks who learn how to train the bot to do the menial work and to really focus on the value added side. So I see this as a win for employees and would love to communicate that message and get feedback if it's falling short of that vision, as I think that's the ambition. Do more and have a better quality of life professionally while accomplishing better results for the people we serve in the Commonwealth.
Yeah. Anything new, there's always going to be a feeling out period, but we found that a lot of people, once they engage, they love it and they continue to grow their RPA backlog of automations. Joel, one last thought?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's important for people to start thinking about where they could get started from an automation perspective, and just food for thought. So the 5 hottest things that we're seeing right now in the state government space: anything to do with document processing, anything to do with contact center modernization, helping those contact center agents or chatbots respond faster to people's needs; fraud, waste, and abuse. There's lots of audit capabilities in that space. Cyber, both on the cyber operations center space as well as internal cyber requirements. And then I had already talked about benefits processing. So if anybody's involved in any of those, we'd love to have a further conversation. We have dozens and dozens of use cases of real customers that are doing things. And if nothing else, we can just share those with anyone that's interested.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd be happy to share those. And many of those use cases are on rpa.amplitude9.com. Again, that's rpa.amplitude9.com. It's on the last slide. So I want to thank our guest speakers. They added a lot of tremendous value. I hope everyone really got a true sense of RPA and what the possibilities are. And if you're ready to get started, we're here to help. So thank you again to everyone. And we're going to send out information on the next RPA webinar. If you have any ideas on what you're interested in, whether it's data sharing or cybersecurity or other areas where RPA can help, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.